Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And we're listening to an episode of Mindfulness, Sexuality, and Relationships. And I'm your host, Anita DeFrancesco, founder of Tantra Wisdom. And most of these podcasts can be found on the Facebook group pages as well as Twitter and LinkedIn, but mostly Facebook on my Tantra Wisdom group page. So today I have a very special guest, Tony LoMastro, and we go back as far as 1990 when I met him in Philadelphia. And he manages the Philadelphia and New York Rebirthing Centers with his wife, Maureen. And they've been doing this since 1979. And the rebirthing is a very special type of breathing. So our topic today is breath, self, and sexuality. Just let me give you a little bit more information about Tony. He also teaches the loving relationships training as developed by Sandra Ray. So he's a protege of Sandra Ray, but he has been teaching rebirthing, which is a form of breathing, and the loving relationships training for at least 39, 40 years now. And he says that breath gives him a sense of the sacred and the enormity and gratitude of feeling connected. His contribution is the common and ordinary relationship with breath and spirit. Good afternoon, Tony. How are you? Hello.
Hi, Anita. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm doing well. I'm progressing in my life, which I like. So it was very nice what you said, the introduction.
Now, we go back to 1990. I met you in Philly at your Philadelphia Rebirthing Center in, what is that, Manayunk are you in? Or
we're in East Oak Lane at the end of North Broad Street in Philadelphia, the right in town.
Right. And I remember I came there for an intense workshop that you and Sandra Ray put on, rebirthing, and it was amazing. I felt healed after that. And then I moved to California for 15 years. I don't know what you did to me, but I went there and continued my studies with breathing. And rebirthing is one of the most powerful forms of breathing and working with the self and the sexuality and how people can really, can shift in their lives and learn more about their individuality. So give me some information on how you found your path, Tony. I mean, you've been in this a while. What have you done or before this, or how did you come across this healing?
I was always alternative. Even as a child, I grew up with immigrants, Italian immigrants that immigrated here around 1910. And they were very old world and kept to their little pocket of family. And I was born here. I was Americanized and very different. So there just was something for me in the beginning, and how I connected with the mystical in Catholicism, with the saints, the ardor and the fervency of the saints. It just sparked in me a drive, I felt like I was in a rapture my first 14 years of life. And, one thing leads to another. I did the S training in 1978, which helped me realize that I wasn't the only one that had a path. I wasn't the only one that had upsets or situations going on in their life. And it really gave me a platform of some sensible management of what to do with this package that I am. And right after the S training, which is the landmark forum now, I went to a rebirthing weekend. I had a massage buddy. He went to get a massage. And the woman rebirthing, this was in 79, I think, and he came back and rebirthed me, immediately. This was a Wednesday, and on Friday we were in Hoboken doing a rebirthing weekend. And I finally met a group of people that got me and could reflect back to me who I was and what my qualities were. Because growing up, there wasn't an acknowledgement that you had qualities. It was more of a conforming to the family ways, to the religious ways.
So you felt you were a little bit sort of out of that box in a way.
Yeah, they weren't my tribe. And then I found people more aligned with who I am. I didn't even know that there was a search for it. You know, it's like you trip over things. And it started from there about healthier relationships, a path, a way of making a strategy for myself that would be healthy. You know, a way to live, a way to eat, how to heal past relationships, let go of relationships, how to have work that is more in alignment with what I want and what I want to do and the things that I love to do. I never had that before rebirthing. It's the first kind of occupation or skill that I truly liked.
So you started to rebirth around 1978, after or before EST?
I started to rebirth in July of 79.
July
in June of 78.
So now let's talk a little bit about Leonard Orr and rebirthing and what it is and where it came from. And when did it start? Wasn't it Leonard Orr and Sandra Ray, or Leonard Orr was the founder of it?
Orr is certainly the founder. And around 1974, he was always like he's a brilliant eccentric, you know, one of those really out there kind of people. And also a Christian fundamentalist, a Bible person. So he had a lot of abuse in his history and, you know, went very deep inside about things to work on. And he was a consult for Werner Erhard for the S training, whatever category they would ask him questions for support and guidance. And, you know.
So did he coin that term, rebirthing? Did he coin the term?
Yes, because it was the only word, because the word means change, and change in a spiritual way. It was the only word that could describe what your life was like after 10 sessions. Because you finally opened all the windows and doors of your physical being and your psyche and started to ventilate and create a conscious relationship with your breath and start to use your breath in a way to move your energy, you start breathing, it starts opening up these channels in your psyche about stuck items, withheld items.
So did
you were in a car accident? Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. Continue. Go ahead.
So if you were in a car accident when you were 6 years old, and no one comforted you, you're freaked out. You know, they put you in front of the television with a piece of pizza. There's a lot of that trauma that is still held in cell memory because it was never processed. When you start breathing, that might become one of the items that you start thinking about or that comes up. And when you're breathing and laying down for an hour to an hour and a half, you have these kind of larger gaps in between thoughts and feelings. So you can be with something more in present time than in the unconscious reaction we had to being in an accident when we were 6.
So Go ahead. So here I have a question for you. Getting into the rebirthing, what does it mean about, when I had a rebirthing session, I had it with Sandra Ray at your place there, and it brought up the trauma from my birth. Can you talk about that? Like the type of birth that I had. Does it have...
Everyone is stuck in their birth trauma. Some people in the helplessness of infancy. Some people in an abuse issue as a child. Some people in angry adolescence. But birth is one of the first changes that comes upon us. You know, the bliss of the womb floating around, all of a sudden there's contractions, and we come out into the world, into a lot of intensity. You know, loud sounds, our cord being cut, taking our first breath. There's a lot that goes on. It can be held in cell memory. You know, our mother might have drugged, so we lose psychic connection with her at the time of birth. That feeling of oneness that we've had with this being that we grew our bodies in. We're at one with our mother's psyche. So, I broke my collar at birth, collarbone, and it was very painful. Besides, I was drugged. My mother didn't want to feel anything. And, some people are pulled out with forceps.
Right, and this is the birth trauma. This is the birth trauma that we experience.
Part of birth trauma, yes. Cord around the neck, being held upside down. Can you imagine for the first time your spinal cord is held straight up and down? I mean, what must that feel like? And they're aspirating you while you're trying to take your first breath, sucking the fluid out of your trachea.
So let me get back. Oh, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yeah. So getting back to the rebirthing of it. Now, this trauma that is held in the body as an unexpressed emotion that could live at a cellular level, it also lives in the muscles, and it can affect one's sexuality, relationships, connecting. And so the breath. Now, there's many types of breath out there, there's the orgone energy breathing and the rebirthing, and I've done a lot of them, and I really like them all. Rebirthing was one that really got me the jump start because it was about the birth, and there was a lot of trauma around my birth, which I won't get into, but it was so present for me that it was such an awakening that what can people experience, with rebirthing and your approach with this, their breathing? Tell me a little bit about how it's done, the approach of rebirthing. If someone would come to you and they feel that they want to change and work on themselves, they feel they have some trauma from the past, they want to work out issues from their childhood, or their sexuality, or people that have been assaulted, abused. How does this work, and how do you apply it? How can you go into that?
So rebirthing is about healing and getting beyond recovery. So it is about healing and learning a conscious relationship with your breath. So you can do this on your own. You go to a rebirther for so many sessions, and they're educating you about your breath and supporting you in feeling safer each session and going deeper. So you lay down after you've talked to your breath coach. Say you have an abuse issue. You were not considered, you were smacked a lot. And, they pinched your bottom when you went by, that kind of confusion and indignity. You talk about these items with your breath coach, and then you lay down and breathe for an hour to an hour and a half in a circular way. It's pulling on the inhale and relaxing on the exhale, coming right up with the inhale, letting go of the exhale, right? It becomes a circle. There's no mantra, no candles. You can keep your shoes on. You can do it in the subway. There's no ritual it has to be with it. You know.
Now, you as a facilitator, do you place your hands on their body?
We don't touch.
Okay.
Because that was distracting. So someone's they're breathing away. All of a sudden they're starting to feel all this energy in their body. Maybe they're having some memories from childhood that they haven't thought about in a long time. And so maybe they might go into a fear. They might, recapture a moment when someone coming down the hall to hit them or touch them wrong. So they're in the fear. So what we want to do is have them feel that fear in present time. Because if we touch, it would be distracting. If I touched you on the shoulder while you're going through this emotion and this, point in your body, your attention would be pulled towards your shoulder. What I want you to do is breathe and feel. Feel, that terror, that fear. The terror you were feeling when someone was coming down the hallway and you didn't know what they were going to do.
Okay.
So it's learning to love your fear, your anger, your sadness. Learning to love toxins. Because toxins need love too. They get so much rejection. People are detoxing, it's like, really savage surgery to the psyche. So love is what heals, and when you can be with fear, and feel it instead of run from it, by eating something, by smoking something, by, calling your mother. That's a distraction. So it's like when you do rebirthing, you lay there and breathe and feel.
So you want them to actually confront their feelings, confront their fears, and actually, in a sense, they dissolve. They dissolve once they confront them and they're in the present moment with them?
They become less dense. Because less dense. They don't go anywhere. Nothing goes ever anywhere. It's just you heal your relationship to them. Your relationship to this pool of sadness you've had from a child. Mm-hmm. Then you start to include that sadness in who you are.
Right, right. But being able to accept it more, being able to live with it, being able to understand it, and face it, accept it.
Yes, and sadness changes into gratitude. And people always feel sad from a loss. So we teach about when someone dies, the first thing you do is gratitude. Something I'm grateful for them. Instead of going into loss, when death is included in this dimension at the on the planet we're living on.
Right.
So included and accepted and addressed with gratitude. And you will have a process. You will go through feelings. But you breathe and be with them instead of medicate over them, whatever people do over them.
Go ahead.
Rebirthing session, you might go through, 3 and 4 different cycles of different situations coming up. Or you might just, after 20 minutes, go into this blissful, tranquil place, which we really encourage you to be with, because we're so used to all the fireworks and the upsets and, the boo-hoos. We get to see or think that that's normal.
So people's cellular level gets sort of an addiction to that negative that lives there.
Yeah, that's what makes
them
feel alive. Because they're used to that, and they grew up in that atmosphere of upset, angry dad, schizo mommy, mean brother, all that kind of, family dynamics actually become familiar.
Yeah, they're patterns in the body.
Yeah, we create those dynamics in our friendships, in our work environment, the same ones we did growing up.
So what the goal is what it is to feel free, what it is to feel your feelings and feeling a sense of freedom from these.
Unified with yourself. To feel unified with yourself, which includes the abuse we grew up with, the indignities that we endured. So toward the end of a rebirth, and maybe a few times in between, you'll go into a very peaceful, tranquil state. One of vast, quiet, soft immensity of tranquility. And that's the part that is the most healing part, because the body can relax and go into more healthier placement. It's like most of us, our bodies are like a pinball bouncing off the bumpers. Bounce, bounce, bounce.
Mm.
The end of a great meditation or the end of a breathing session, you have this amazing tranquility. Amazing. And it's like, that's what's healing. That is what we get our clients to get used to. And you stay there even if it's, for 40 minutes.
Now, who was the first person to rebirth you?
Bill Thompson. He's the one that came back from massage, and the woman breathed him. And then immediately to me, and rebirthed me. And then we were at a weekend in Hoboken.
So Bill Thompson, he's probably no longer around, is he, or is he still around?
In the body anymore.
Yeah.
No,
well, here's
crying and
here's a question. I wanted to know how the individual expression of my sexuality, how does this work with one's individual expression of the sexuality?
Well, you have to realize how indoctrinated we are in ways to be. Like your family, it's not like you're announcing on hetero. It's like that's just expected. That's just the behavior of everyone going on around you. I'm talking the years we grew up. The last 20 years have been different around the acceptance of a range of sexuality, not just male, female, or, that there is a range, and that some people, women, I think more possibly have a more fluid sexuality to where they can be heterosexual for 10 or 15 years, and then maybe with a woman for another 10 years, and who knows the combinations in between. But in the beginning, it's really the inquiry about your indoctrination, religious indoctrination. There was no room for homosexuality, and social indoctrination besides family. That you had to stay in the closet. I used to tell clients that's why the closet existed in the corporate world in the 80s. If you gave a disclosure about your sexuality, that would be used against you. The way they do the information now. Because they can't use the sexuality against you anymore.
Right. So that created a lot of emotional disconnection over the years with everyone, because, it's a collective energy of just,
and start acting in uncomfortable and inappropriate ways for yourself. So it might cause you to become a peeping Tom. I don't know what they call women. To start becoming a voyeuristic. Mm-hmm. It might cause you, to play with yourself in public places. It might cause you to excessive masturbation, or to go crazy over trying not to masturbate. like the Mormons have this whole treatment, how not to masturbate, and, how they go to don't masturbate camp.
So you're saying that people that would become a peeping Tom or, do things in the closet, so to speak. How about sexual abuse? People that like priests and things like that with boys, and how about that?
Those kids had no idea of the impact of their behavior. They were clueless. And most of them, if they had any idea that this would be upsetting to the child I'm having sex with, it might have been different. And now with public exposure and the psychology education that we had in 2018, we're aware of the impact that these improprieties have on us and how they can drive us so deeply inside that we're like insane. We're literally crazy. With the fear of it happening again, the fear of hiding it all the time. I mean, how many things do we hide besides sexual?
Well, sex has been the taboo all the time. Hetero, homo, it's always been the taboo of the world. People still fear sex. There's a lot of shame around it. And a lot of objective things that the parents raise them to believe about, sexuality and religion and all of those things. I mean, it's still a topic of shame, I believe.
Because it's pleasurable. Pain is not shameful, but pleasure is shameful. It's like, it's just that way. It's shameful. And to know that sex is innocent. Pleasure is innocent. That's why we're together. Whether, you and I would have agreements in our time together, if we were together, at a restaurant, physically, whatever.
Yes.
It would be comfortable for us.
So in other words, the world doesn't see pleasure as a form of the human condition as far as the worthiness of a person and the deserving and the celebration that we and in Tantra,
they might never, ever, no matter how much all this new age education that's out there on billboards now, these affirmations and advertising all over the place.
I have to say where we are. You're listening to, for anyone just tuning in, you're listening to an episode of Mindfulness, Sexuality, and Relationships. I am your host, Anita DeFrancesco, Tantra Wisdom founder, and my guest today is Tony LoMastro, who is the founder and creator and manager of the Philadelphia and New York Rebirthing Centers with his wife here since 1979 on the East Coast. And we're talking about Rebirthing, which was founded and coined by Leonard Orr back in the day. I wanted to talk more now, Tony, about something about the loving relationships training that you and Sandra Ray, that you worked with her for a very long time on this, and you do this. And is Rebirthing part of that? Can you get into some of that, the loving relationships training?
Rebirthing is very much part of the loving relationships training. The training was really one of the first things we supported our clients in doing, because it put a lot of the information about the power of breath work together, and it stimulated a lot of the items that could come up to be addressed for healing. Because the training goes over 10 patterns that are common in relationships. And we go into a very strong inquiry about how we constructed our relationships, how we picked up and from family, from television, from social ways of how to relate to other people. And, how to be polite, how to be nice. But a lot of this, pardon?
Yeah, so a lot of this is just learned from role modeling or whatever we're exposed to.
Or just how to be good. Instead of, most of them, the good little girl, good little boy pleasing. This continues most of our life, even though we don't want to. We learn how to be polite and accommodating and learn how to be pleasers. So the loving relationship training over 2 nights and 2 days is a big look at what am I doing and how can I change this in present time? What decisions can I make? What supportive steps can action steps take towards, the feeling of men always leave me, or women get what they want from me and leave, or, these chronic behaviors of bickering in relationship, the Bickersons. If you grew up with bickering parents, you just automatically do that because you don't know any different. And really give an exercise in taking a breath, look at what you're saying, choosing not to bicker, saying, I need to not talk for 5 minutes, or go back and forth and back and forth. But then no Cubie doll. There's no prize. And
so you want to bringing them this awareness that whatever they grew up with is sort of a transference, or that they've been exposed to it, like bickering parents. And my parents, they argued terribly, and my sister argues in her relationship, but I sort of had that extra sense as a child to realize that, hey, this is not what I want in my relationship. And so I took it a step out. But it does take an awareness and awakening first before someone can realize that they are.
Not everyone is ready. They'll go through this incarnation clueless. And yes, we have people like you that are big into outreach and educating, and that's what I do, educating people. But there is options. There is an alternative. But you've got to be ready for it. You might be so loyal to the unconscious family ways that you'll take it to the grave.
And part of getting ready is just listening to a podcast like this. Is just one way, or reading a book, or
Exactly.
and even if you hear the person say, "Well, nothing's changed, nothing's happened," but that's okay because these are all the steps, and sometimes to get to the deeper levels. Right. So the loving relationships training. Now, are they in this training? Are they doing it with a couple or single people? How does that work?
Well, anyone can do it because it's about the relationship with yourself.
Oh, okay. The relationship
about relationship with your boss, with another man or woman, a significant other. The whole program is about the relationship with yourself, because that's the only relationship you have. We have other people around for a long time, short time. It's about healing the relationship with yourself.
So this relationship to the self, which I have a very strong relationship to myself, can that be fearful for a new person, embarking upon that path? To some people, find it to be scary, huh?
Well, yes, 100%, because it's about change, and what they're most afraid of is changing and being disloyal to the old ways. The family ways, especially. But it's about change, and on Thursday night of the...
And being judged about the new person that they become, or judged along the way for just making the changes.
When you change is outside of you, and people fall away. The ones that, were keeping you dense, the ones that were creating unhealthy behaviors, your drinking friends, or, the rag about men or women groups. Whatever that is, things change. And that's what people have a lot of resistance to, is change.
Changed. And how about shifting? How would you classify shifting within the change? Is there a shift that happens within their character, their psychological?
Certainly, yes, and we support them in pacing it, going slowly and gently. You know, if you're going to finally let go of a burdensome relationship, something that just dumps on you on the phone, okay, you know, that person's calling again, they're, you know, doing the same uncomfortable verbiage about a significant other, and neither of you are getting anywhere, and you just become more resentful about having to listen to it. And she just gets to hold hostage, that person gets to hold you hostage. So, you know, there's steps about, you know, that we've had this conversation multiply in the past, and maybe you need to talk to someone else, like a therapist or a counselor, to get new ideas, because it doesn't seem to be moving with just you and I talking. Or, you know, there needs to be a new strategy. Because
Right.
the more your self-esteem raises, the less you'll be able to tolerate that stuff. The less you'll be able to tolerate being dumped on. The less you'll be able to tolerate trivial, useless relationships.
So what happens do they become more vulnerable now, and they have to create certain boundaries? They become more vulnerable once they let down the armor, they undo, and they become the change, the new. Is there a sense of where they have to experience the vulnerability? That's where the fear comes, huh?
That's one place where the fear comes from, is being vulnerable. But you were equally vulnerable before you start addressing this. So you're vulnerable, and that's where you go to a therapist. They can come to you to have the work that you do. They can come to me for breathing. They can do a weekend workshop and relate to other people that are on the same path, maybe with a different expression, but it's the same thing. I want to become a better person. I want more function in my life. I want my life to have value and get to be worth it. That's because I just woke up this morning. That's not enough.
So you want their life to have more purpose. So this vulnerable this vulnerable that you talk about, they are vulnerable. But here's what I want to say about this first. The vulnerableness is there before they heal and after. The only difference is that they feel it after. While they're in the pain that they're living in, they're not really feeling that vulnerableness because they're so numb and they haven't done the work. But once
they haven't been processed. You can tell when you're around people that have not been processed, have not been called on their over-talking, who don't know what a personal distance is and that are in their face. So, you know, it's easy to tell people who have not been processed or have any kind of self-help work done on them.
Because they're not feeling. And so
a yoke of helplessness and dread and fear and hopelessness.
So with your training, with this rebirthing, now how many sessions would someone need to, say, get on the right path? It depends on what they have going on, I would imagine.
Well, it's suggested to do 10 sessions with one gender and 10 with the other. Because
really?
When you do 10 with a woman and then when you change to a man. Because the truth is we're different no matter who's in front of us. The gender in front of us really makes a difference about how we relate, how we act unconsciously. It's 10 with one gender, 10 with the other. And then we start a 9-month program here in September. So that's 9 weekends for 9 months, 1 weekend a month for 9 months.
So you're starting that. Tell us what you're doing so that people can find out about you, about where to connect. You're having this fall now, 9 weekends?
In September it starts. So
okay.
September 21st 21 and
Okay.
22. And that weekend will be on conception.
So they have to go the whole 9 weekends. They have to attend the whole 9 weekends.
Oh yeah, it's a program, and the value of that is the relationships, upping the quality of who you are and how you are in the presence of someone else. And this is a group. We're a group of about 20 with this one. So each weekend has a theme. One weekend, the first weekend on conception. Do you know how you were conceived? Are you a honeymoon baby or
I
Chevy or?
I don't know. I really don't know that. I'll have to ask. The second born. No, I was the second. I'll tell you about my birth. When I was born, my mother she was unsure I was her child, and even today we don't know if my father is really my father. And during the time my mother was pregnant, my father kept saying, "It's not my baby, it's not my baby." And there was a lot of abuse that went on around my time in the womb. And then my mother tried to abort me. She tried to abort me and put some poisons up. In 1956, I was born, so abortion was illegal, I believe, then. And she tried to put these poisons up me and like all this kind of like stuff that would supposedly kill the fetus. But it didn't. And when I was born with a disease. And when I had the rebirthing with you and Sandra back in 1990, the first word that came to my mouth was disease. And I felt that was my birth. My birth was a disease because I was covered in a diseaseful type of whatever the poisonous medicine that my mother put up there. At the time, I don't know what it was, but she had told me this when I was 36, and I'd already been living in L.A. because I wanted, actually, it was before I went to L.A. I think after I had the session with you and Sandra, I asked her about my birth, and then she told me I think I was like 29 or 30, and that's when I discovered, wow, no wonder I've been having all these issues.
Right.
That was a big part of it. But the disease, I always felt dirty, and I'm a swimmer. I swim athletically. I always feel like I need to be in water, cleaning, or at least bathing in the womb again, somewhat in a positive way when I go to healing spas and things. So
you want to cleanse it.
Yeah, so the womb was dirty. It was dirty because of the talk, the negative gestures that my father had projected onto my mother. And at the same time, there was so much negativity that it's a wonder that the fetus, me, didn't die in there. But then when she put the poisons, it didn't work. But I did come out. I was sick. I was like diseased. My body was diseased because, and then I had rheumatic fever. I got rheumatic fever from that, rheumatic heart disease, like a couple of years into my, first grade in school. I was 5 years old. And it was from all of that. The immune system couldn't handle whatever happened in that time. And, but anyway, it was interesting because this.
Your life urge stronger than your death urge.
Huh? You said what? What?
Your life urge is stronger than your death urge.
Oh, right. No, I have a whole, I wrote a book, Live Free and all, and how I celebrated life and how my life force was stronger than, I asked for life and it came, it was a whole mystical thing for me. And at the time, because it was very powerful. That was my biggest awakening, actually, and that was the start of me getting on this path. But it was a subconscious path. It wasn't something that I said, "Hey, I'm going to be working with spirit and tantra and all of these things." It was something that I was just called to do because my spirit had gone through some kind of change from that birth, coming through that canal and fighting to live, because that stuff. Whatever the mothers put up them, back then they had some kind of stuff where you can kill the fetus that they put in the 1950s. What was it?
You were launched out of the womb into yourself. You were no longer at that effect of your mother being inside of her. I mean, did she take care of you when you were born?
Oh, of course, but the whole time she wanted to have the abortion because then she convinced my father it was his child, and we never really got clear on that. And my parents are dead now, and But it doesn't matter that we got clear on it. I accept my father as my father, the man who raised me, the name I carry. But it was a lot of negativity and a wall, built a strong wall over the years from that. It was a big pattern of unacceptance. And so my mother was really unsure of who. And that's why if she could have aborted me, she probably would have, just to make him happy, because back then the women did anything to make the man happy, back then, sort of, when women weren't as independent as they are now, to take off. And just, my mother needed my father. He was the breadwinner, and all of that. But and then others were born. I had a brother before me and a sister and brother after that. But everything was fine. So I never felt like they were my brothers and sisters. It's just so weird. The whole thing, I just kind of became the awakened shaman, where I stepped out and I created my whole life.
Do you think your father's your father?
When I looked at the other man and I said, wow, I kind of look like him. I look like my father. I don't know. I think so. But I spent the last 10 years with my father before he died. I came back east, 2008. And I built that relationship to him, that even though he always had that cold wall, because he never really, that moment of the birth was, and he loved my mother and he was with her for 20 years, but it was like he could never get over that. He needed to be rebirthed. So he could have moved out.
Move that energy, to cycle it, instead of it being such a stuck block of negativity somewhere in his mind and body.
Right, and it was amazing when Sandra knew, when I did that rebirthing session in 1990, I believe, or 1989, somewhere around there, and then I said, there's disease all over me. And then Sandra said, ask your mother about your birth. And I asked her, and she told me this. And I said, oh my God, I've been living all these years not knowing this story. And so interesting. But you know what? It was good, because my mother broke down and she cried when she told me, and it was, it's emotional. I'm going through it. A friend of mine just recently died, but so my emotions are a little bit raw right now. But anyhow, this was like, wow, I'm learning something about myself. No wonder I didn't feel connected to my father. No one of my brothers and sisters didn't really feel like I was their blood sibling. And so anyhow, but the rebirthing has really, really helped me. I want to see other people get help and learn about, what's going on in their whole entire life. So what else do you want to tell us on this, Tony, about how, you have a class coming up for 9 weekends in September? What else can you say or talk? What else do you want to get into before we tell people how we can contact you? Are you offering any, a free consultation on the phones for new people that may want to, learn? Yeah, that want to learn about what you do, or?
Yeah, so the website is PhiladelphiaRebirthing.com.
Okay.
And house number is 215-424-4444. And my cell, 215-779-1254.
So they can find everything on the www.PhiladelphiaRebirthing.com?
Correct.
PhiladelphiaRebirthing.com.
Our events on there. The first thing to do is to have a session. And then, you see where you're at after that. And then, after a few sessions, to do a weekend, which is most important. I think we have a weekend at the beginning of September.
Okay. So I did one of those weekends. Very powerful. Yes. I have to say, it really jump-started me into really on my path to want to heal. But, I was young, and it doesn't matter the age of someone, right? Coming into this work, they can come in at any age.
Most certainly. We're all the same age anyway.
Correct. Yeah. Yes, we are. So you're going to so once they do a few sessions with you or Maureen or both of you, then they go into one weekend, and then do they need a prerequisite to get into the 9-weekend class?
No, they can come right into the 9 months, the personal growth program, and it's also the beginning teaching to become a breath coach.
Okay. So this is wonderful. You have been such a wonderful guest for me to learn a lot more about where you've come from in your past. What I wanted to say is that when you were talking about the Catholicism and how where most people don't find the mystical in Catholicism.
Well, I never connected with Jesus or Mary. I never, the belief system of virgin birth and resurrection and the gory crucifixion and Stations of the Cross. And, I just connected with the ardor of the saints, the rapture, the fervency of the saints. St. Teresa, St. Anthony, St. Francis.
So just like we do in Tantra, we connect to the deity, not so much any religion at all, but just the deities for who they are, who they represent. The masters, the deity or the saints, I would consider them to be very mystical and very the same, actually, because they're people that pioneered or did something like Buddha, the Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the deities such as Kali and different, and the same with the saints. I've always found that connection as well. Maybe that is something that the everyday person, I think people more or less look at politics when they look at Catholic religion.
Yeah, they just put it in a container with religion is bad. Whatever they do, or they just go and maybe get some socialization at church.
Right,
but they never notice what's going on, or they don't understand the Mass.
But none of these things involve religion. Breathing is just the fullness of your being, who you are. But it's nice to know that religion can really, or a
guru or any of that.
That can make people sometimes
personal for people. If I had a guru, I wouldn't talk to you about it.
Right.
It's personal.
Yes. So sometimes all the things in the political world can actually create a defensive character or shame or give people, different views about, and they can really separate from themselves too.
Well, it gives them a reason to say life is not fair. Life is corrupt. I'm a victim, of all this political climate that we're in now. But I guarantee it's about change. Trump is in there and he's changing everything. He's the one he's part of the swampy draining. So we will prevail and the change will be positive. And there's a woman from France here a couple of weeks ago, and it was interesting about how compassionate they feel for us Americans and sorry for us to have such, a man being supposedly in his position being president. So it was interesting, the world isn't stupid.
Yes, yeah.
They know what's happening for us.
Well, the change is loud now. Whatever's happening, it's very loud, and apparently it's just a big cloud coming over the human condition that people don't really, they either, object to it or they're driven to it. And, right. Yeah, so it's a whole nother, but I would love to have another interview with you, interview you on another one of my shows, because you have been such a great guest, Tony. We are listening to an episode of Mindfulness, Sexuality, and Relationships. I'm your host, Anita DeFrancesco, founder of Tantra Wisdom, and my guest today was Tony LoMastro, who is the founder. He manages the Philadelphia and New York Rebirthing Centers with his wife, Maureen. They've been in this since 1979, and they also offer loving relationships training workshops. And it is wonderful because I've taken part in this. This was the beginning of my journey before I left Philly and went to California and then came back to Philly some 15, 20 years later. But this was one of the most powerful and workshops that I've ever taken. It really made a difference in my life. I have to say that you have been such a great guest, Tony. Let's go over your information again. His website is www.philadelphiarebirthing.com. His telephone number is 215-424-4444, which you can probably get that on your website, correct?
Yes. There's a lot of good information on the website to look around. So thank you very much. This has been, equally good on my end. Speaking with you, very easy. You're easy to talk to. And
thank you very much for that. Thank you. Tony, I wish you the best this weekend and whatever you're doing and for these workshops. And I'm going to promote this because I'd really like to see people get into this. It's really a wonderful path to begin or even take part in now, even if you are on some path to enlighten yourself a little further with the Rebirthing Centers here in Philadelphia and New York with Tony LoMastro. Thank you so much, Tony. All right. All right. Thank you, my audience. And we are out of here. Have a great day. Bye. Bye-bye.